For the life of me, I could not stop staring at his hands. I knew it was impolite to stare, and by the way he only looked down at the ground, I could tell he was used to people staring. But I couldn't stop. I mean, after all, it's not every day you see somebody with leprosy, right? Leprosy, the disease that eats the soft tissues in your extremities, and in extreme cases can lead to the loss of digits and or limbs. This guy was missing most of his toes and a couple of fingers on each hand. And as I walked up the stairs to the temple in Nepal that day, I felt everything I thought I knew start to shift. I felt the reality that I believed in begin to kind of shift. And all of a sudden, the things I thought were automatic, I did not take for granted anymore. Hi, I'm Wes. I'm one of the pastors at CCOF. Welcome to Trinity Sessions episode 4. Today we're talking about worship, which simply can be thought of as expressing in words, music, ritual, and silent adoration the greatness, beauty, and goodness of God. But for today, simply, I think we can think of worship as acknowledging God and His reality. Now, I really believe that one of the most important things that we can do as 21st century Americans is reconcile what we think is real with what actual reality is, right? What we think is real with what actual reality is. For example, as 21st century Americans, we have more control over our lives than anybody ever has ever, right? We have financial resources and education and healthcare and the ability to choose our future like nobody else has. We get to choose the college we go to and the program we study and the career path we take. We have more control over our reality than anybody ever has at any point in human history, arguably. What we end up doing really with all these choices is creating a reality where we have a bunch of safety nets that keep us nice and comfortable and cozy. Until, of course, one of those safety nets vanishes. See, by living in this way, we live as though we have no need for God. Think about it. If you're perfectly educated and well-fed and healthy, why do you need a God anyways? Well, you probably don't until your reality begins to shift. There's a story I love. The story I love about this ancient group of people. They were actually a nation who were taken into slavery by the Egyptians for about 400 years until one day, through this crazy series of events, they escape slavery with the help, the story says, of God and of their leader Moses. And as they're kind of wandering, traveling through the desert to get to their new place where they'll live, God is sort of rehabilitating them, right? Physically, mentally, and spiritually rehabilitating them from slavery. And in that effort, God kind of inspires some writings through their leader. And this is what it says in Deuteronomy chapter 8. Check this out. Deuteronomy chapter 8, verses 17 through 19. It says, "You might say to yourself, 'My power and my strong hands have made me rich.' But remember the Lord your God. He gives you the ability to produce wealth. That shows He stands by the terms of the covenant He made with you." A covenant is a relational agreement. It's like the blending of contract and relationship together. That's covenant. He stands by the covenant He made with you. He promised it to your people long ago, and He's still faithful to this covenant today. Verse 19, "Don't forget the Lord your God. Don't serve other gods. Don't worship them and bow down to them. I am a witness against you today that if you do, you will certainly be destroyed." Now, see, God is warning these people. What He's saying is, at some point in the future, you will become successful. You will prosper. And I don't want you to forget why. See, because you will begin to believe slowly that you are the reason for your success, your hard work or your intellect or your diligence, that these things have made you successful or wealthy. In reality, God says, that's not the case. I am the one who gave you those abilities in the first place. It is me who is responsible for that, not you. It's a really interesting thought that God may have granted those things. But the warning is twofold. He also has this little diatribe about like worshiping other gods. And to be honest with you, I think we are in the same place that these people are. God warns them not to worship other gods, and we're not in a polytheistic society, but we do have other gods. See, when we live like we have no need for God, these safety nets can become these things that we worship: our intellect, our wealth, our education, our capacity, our choices. These things become gods to us until they're taken away. See, I once heard a pastor say, make no mistake, you will worship your guts out from the day you were born until the day you take your last breath. The question is, what or who will you worship? See, Nepal was the first time I ever really had to wrestle with reality. And maybe today is the first time for you. I hope it is. I hope maybe for the first time you're realizing that some of these safety nets that you've been putting in your life, that you've been depending on, or maybe even that you've been worshiping and acknowledging and giving your life to, aren't serving you so well. See, today our Trinity practice is to begin to acknowledge God. And so here's what I would direct you to do is to make a list of 5 things that you love about God. And if you'll allow me, let me advise you in a couple of different categories that you should start with. The first is things about God's nature that you love. So like God is ... The second thing would be things about God's action that you love. So God has done ... By remembering these 2 things, who God is and what he's done, we can begin to reinstall worship of the creator of life. See, because that second warning wasn't about God killing them if they didn't worship. It was that their own actions would take them down a path in which life became impossible for them. I pray that that's not the case for us. I pray that you remember today, even if it's just one thing that you heard about a friend tell you 5 years ago. What's one thing, one way in which you can acknowledge God today?